Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Utica. I'm Roz Kearney, a member of the Board of Trustees. Whether you are visiting us for the first time or have been a member for many years, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are invited to bring our whole selves to this worship service, our doubts as well as our convictions, the pain and joy we have known, our longing for connection and understanding. Every part of you is welcome here.
Our congregation acknowledges that the land on which UU Utica is situated is the ancestral lands of the Oneida Nation, one of the original nations of the Haudenosaunee Iroquois people. If you're signing in today for the first time, we're glad you have joined us, and we would love to learn more about you and connect you with our newsletter if you like. There's a link in the chat to a form that we hope any visitors will fill out, and we hope you will stay for an informal conversation in breakout rooms after the service. We have a couple of announcements today. Choir practices are happening weekly, Thursdays, 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. in the church sanctuary. There will be 4 more in December. And at the practice on the 16th, we'll record carols for the Christmas Eve service. Email Jules and Patty at music@uuutica.org if you want to participate or have any questions, and maybe we can throw that email in the chat as well. Second announcement is that this is Reverend Laurie's last service with us, and December is Reverend Laurie's last month with us. Many of you probably know this already, but I wanted to get it out there that from everyone in the congregation and the Board of Trustees, that we're very thankful for our time that we've had with Reverend Laurie. She was a personal inspiration to me during my time as the board president, and really helped a lot with me getting through some of the tough times with the church and some of the things we've started as part of her targeted ministry program with us, the Social Justice Council, Right Relations. And it's just been really, I think, a wonderful experience for us to work with her. Unfortunately, she would like to have continued her time with us, but family commitments prevent that from happening. So I just wanted to say a deep, deep thanks, love and gratitude to Reverend Laurie. And we're also going to, as a little parting gift, donate a little bit to Reverend Laurie's favorite charity, which is Celebration Forest, which is an organization that works on getting trees planted and trying to encourage people to get trees planted in cities, towns, villages where they are. And so that'll be kind of a little token of our appreciation from the congregation. Thank you very much, Reverend Laurie. We really love you and wish you all the success in the world in the future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for your kind words. Come, let us worship. We're gathered together this day to remind ourselves of who we are and what we are to do. Really, that's what every Sunday morning worship service is about. We come to affirm our deepest connections to one another and to the source of life, and in the hope that ultimately one day each shall be whole and all shall live as one. Come, let us worship together. Our chalice lighting words are from Lindsay Bates. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. And may its glow fill our spirits and our hearts and our lives.
When Reverend Laurie asked me to talk about how I find joy, the two things that came to mind were music and my work with young scholars. Yesterday, I went to the HD opera of Eurydice, and during the intermission interviews, the conductor, Yannick Nézet-Séguin, wore a t-shirt that said in large letters, "More joy." He's an ebullient, passionate conductor, and his joyous love of music is contagious. And I find daily joy in all kinds of music. But for me, joy has a lot to do with meaning. For the past 3 years, I have been a mentor for a Burmese American teenager who is now a senior at Proctor. I learned about the Young Scholars Program at the showing of a short film at the JCC called The Bench. A recent immigrant to Utica was paired with someone who'd been here for longer, and they sat on the bench and talked about their experiences. During the Q&A, someone talked about the young scholars and the opportunity for mentoring. I literally jumped out of my seat saying, I want to do this. In my work as a psychologist, I taught seminars, supervisor, but I had never been a mentor. A young Korean man behind me said, I can help you. And he gave me the coordinator's email. When she and I went to Sake's house to meet her and her family, I realized that I was going to get at least as much out of this relationship as she would. And that has been true. I now mentor another girl, a friend of Sake's, and sometimes the three of us do things together. It is one of the organizing principles of my current life. There are times when I can say, this makes my day. I took Sake to the cider mill in Clinton a couple of months ago, and when we got there, she said, I'm so nervous. And when I asked her what about, she said that she was waiting to hear whether she had gotten a Questbridge scholarship. For those of you who don't know, a Questbridge scholarship is a 4-year free ride to a college that you get accepted to that's a matching college. So she checked her email and she had gotten it. She's very small, and I really wanted to pick her up and dance around that store. But I restrained myself, and we ordered donuts instead and sat outside where we attempted to have a serious conversation about where she'd like to go to school. However, a bee joined us. And so instead of just crushing it, we batted at it in between sentences. At the moment, she wants to be a surgeon, and her first choice is Columbia. I did write her a recommendation for the scholarship, and my daughter helped her with her essay, at the end of which my daughter said the same thing that Ryan Miller said about her, which is that she's a rock star. And she is, and she brings me great joy.
If you get too worried, what you ought to do is sing. If you get worried, what you ought to do is sing. If you get worried, what you ought to do is sing. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass. If you get lost, what you ought to do is sing. If you get lost, what you ought to do is sing. If you get lost, what you ought to do is sing. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass. Sing about joy. Sing about love and hope it lasts. Sing about your trouble, it just might you get broken, what you ought to do is sing. If you get broken, what you ought to do is sing. If you get broken, what you ought to do is sing. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass. Sing about joy, sing about love and hoping it lasts. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass, just might pass. Sing about joy, sing about love and hoping it lasts. Sing about your trouble, it just might pass, just might pass, just might pass, just might pass, just might, just might, just might, just pass, just might, just might, just might, just might pass, yeah, just might pass, just might pass.
Good morning. Here we are, smack dab in the season again. As the days grow darker, we seem to ramp up more and more activity, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. In fact, these past few years can seem like more than any one of us can even tolerate. And maybe you're reaching the end of your ability to do that. And if that's true, you will not be alone. However, I want to bring forth a few stories of hope this morning. There are those who we can look to who have found a capacity for joy that is not dependent upon season or circumstance. And they are veterans of life's cruel realities, but have managed to draw upon reserves of the human spirit that allow them to hope and flourish in spite of it all. These people, it's like they draw from a very deep well. And they are people who cultivate a spirit of abundance, even in the midst of scarcity. It's not that they trivialize or minimize the serious nature of the suffering in their lives. That's not what I'm talking about this morning. Many people are living in desperate conditions. But there are those, again, who have found a way to still claim the core humanity. In fact, they are often the first ones to recognize this complexity in their life, but they make conscious choices to affirm life in the life around them. We can recognize these people when we see them. Maybe you have some of these folks in your family. Maybe you recognize them within this congregation. Maybe in the community. These are members of the Joy Committee. Joyce Holliday is a writer for Alive Now and tells a story of a group of people who overwhelmingly qualify to be on this committee. Years ago in Honduras, a group of Salvadorian refugees made their way across the border to find refuge from the war and violence in El Salvador. The refugee camp overflowed. It was like many of the refugees camps we're seeing around the world right now, very limited resources and very dangerous places. Families had already come losing loved ones, and some came, into the camps very sick and weak, and they brought very little with them. Well, it was late November, and this is a true story. I think that's why it speaks so much to me. It was around this time of year, late November, early December, and in the weeks leading up to Christmas, this refugee camp continued to suffer. National Guard authorities would raid the camp and track down people. In fact, one young man was dragged away right in front of his young family and children as they looked on in horror. In another part of the camp, there were tents set up, and there was one tent in which this writer had this information about these women who had stayed up all night nursing an infant because of the dehydration with an eyedropper, and singing and coaxing the mother to continue on in spite of it all. But in the midst of all this sorrow, when the Christmas holidays started to happen, the camp actually burst into some joyful celebration. The women looked for what they could and pooled their resources to bake bread in these handmade adobe ovens they were able to construct. Men searched around and did what they could to come up with meat, and maybe we don't want to know what was in those tamales, but they were made. Children took little wrappers from margarine and fashioned with the gold outside of the wrapper to make and fashion little ornaments that were hung on trees, and made out of clay that they got from the river that was nearby, little figurines of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, and of course added some pigs and armadillos. Well, there was a church worker who had been assigned to the camp and had been working with the refugees over many months. And during all this festivity and the trying to decorate and trying to fashion some kind of joyful celebration, this USA worker withdrew and was found isolated and alone in one part of the camp, and was obviously grieving and overwhelmed by the situation there. But one of the refugees, one woman, came close to her and sat down next to her and confronted her gently, saying, you can't join us in our struggle unless you are willing to also play and celebrate with us. She reminded the worker that every time the refugees were forced to relocate and seek shelter elsewhere, they immediately set up 3 committees. The first one was a construction committee. The second was an education committee. And the third one was a joy committee. Celebration was as basic to the life of these people as digging latrines and teaching their children. The author went on to reflect, saying, just as people with the least are sometimes often the most grateful and generous, I found that people who suffer the most are sometimes the most joyful, an irony of living faithfully. And their joy is something wholly other than the sort of shallow happiness that material things bring and the comforts that bring some joy to all of our lives. It comes not from trying to avoid pain, by softening the blow, but rather moving deeply into pain and finding reasons to rejoice even amidst this kind of suffering and what is difficult. You know, when I wrote this sermon, I started looking for joy stories. You know, where are these people who can do this? And another story came up that was just so telling. It was a story that came out of North Carolina about a little family that attended a small rural church. And there was an itinerant preacher who would come through, maybe once a month. And noticing the poverty of this particular family one Sunday, the minister announced that the next month that they were going to do something very special for a needy family. She didn't point out the family, of course, but that they were all going to need to save up and have a special collection for a needy family this next time she came into town to preach. So she asked them all to dig deeply into their pockets and their bank accounts and raise as much money as they could. And she would return. Well, this one particular family, the Hobsons, a mother, a father, and 3 children, looked at one another and nodded in agreement. While many of the wealthier families looked knowingly in their direction, knowing that it was the Hobson family of which the minister spoke. While returning home, the Hobsons sat down at the kitchen table and had a family meeting and made plans to raise money. The children pooled whatever pennies they had. They looked for ways to clean houses. They sold one of their old oak rockers that they had had for many years. And when the special Sunday came, they set out for church with great anticipation. They couldn't wait to see the smiling faces on the poor family. They were delighted in how much they had been able to raise together, wondering if the offering basket would hold the $70 that they had collected from their efforts. Well, when they arrived at church at the usual time, they entered and members greeted them with unusual enthusiasm. They were not used to having any attention at all. In fact, most people tried to ignore them most times as they sat, closer to the back. Wealthier families sat up front. But it was wonderful to be greeted in such a way. Well, as you might guess, the sermon, maybe like this one, went on for hours, and the Hobson family, the children especially, couldn't wait until this special offering came. And they looked around the church, wondering if the needy family had come in. And they didn't see anyone that fit that description. Finally, when the time came for the offering, the minister instructed the congregation to come forward and place their offering in baskets. And one by one, people came up. Most found $1 or $2 to bring forward. Some wrote their checks, $10, $20, put that in. The Hobsons were the last family to come forward. And as they approached the offering basket, the minister and the congregation were dumbfounded. The Hobsons' oldest daughter carried a canvas bag filled with the money that they had collected and emptied the contents of the bag into the baskets. And it was very obvious that it was the Hobsons that had collected the most money for this special offering. Choking back tears, the minister awkwardly announced that she was stunned by the spirit of giving that she had witnessed, and quickly added that the special collection would be held in trust. And she didn't see any poor families in the church. You know, we don't know the depths of this family's financial struggle. Obviously, they appeared to be very needy to those around them. But we do know one thing about this family. We know that they didn't allow their circumstances to define their sense of being. There are different ways of being impoverished. And it's clear that this family had a wealth of resources that enabled them to live their lives in joyful fullness in spite of their suffering. So my question this morning to each one of us is joyful living a choice? I think so. I think so. Viktor Frankl, of course, professor of psychology and neurology in Vienna, 3 years at Auschwitz. He was a Jewish theologian, and he was a prisoner in also a Holocaust survivor. And many of you are familiar with the book Man's Search for Meaning that Viktor Frankl wrote. And it's one of my go-tos for this kind of depth of living, because he wrote from his own direct experience that he said that we who lived in the concentration camps can remember the men and women who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken away from a person but one thing, the last of our human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances and to find a way to embody life. We are not here this morning to diminish the personal and communal power of suffering in anyone's life, but rather we are here to elevate equally the power of life-giving forces. That is our work in ministry, to elevate and lift up and confront actually suffering by doing justice, but also by showing a way towards joyful living. Well, I looked at the chart that we have for our organizational chart, and one thing I did not see is a joy committee. So my question before you this morning is, are there people serving on this joy committee in this congregation already? And maybe you're just not aware of the opportunities to come together. I know that this committee and these people exist because I have had personal experiences with you that let me know that this kind of spirit is alive and well in this congregation, maybe just a little too hidden. One thing about serving on this Joy Committee is that you only need to really commit to improving the quality of life around you, to bring yourself to congregational life with an intention, knowing that potential goodness resides in everyone here, that we can help bring that out together. A willingness also to allow joy to prevail, to allow it to be and lead with it. Lead with celebration. We talked about appreciative inquiry when we're making decisions, to name what is good and celebrate it first before looking for how we may make any kind of alterations. You only need to buy into one agenda for this, and that is to build a community that embraces the concept of universal love. In spite of it all, serving on the Joy Committee does not require previous experience. There is no limit to the number of people who can serve. There's no sign-up sheet. And you might really like to know, there's actually no committee meeting. You only need to count yourself in. In this environment of hate that we live in this country, around the world, in this environment of suffering, and with the scarcity model, the most radical thing we can do is bring forth a spirit of joy and a spirit of abundance. And again, it doesn't diminish suffering, but it certainly is one of the most powerful things that we can do. So we are standing at a crossroads to the future, and we must choose our course of action very carefully. So let us choose joy. Let us choose thanksgiving and gratitude so that it can prevail here in this ministry and serve as a path forward for others within the community. All our days to come. Bless you this season and all the seasons ahead of you. And it has been my special joy to serve with you. I want you to know I'm not leaving because I feel I'm done with work with you. I'm not leaving because you are a difficult congregation. No, I have seen lots of growth and lots of good things. I expect nothing but wonderful things to come forward from all the work that you've done. I'm leaving because I need to tend to some of the suffering in my family. And I have a father with dementia. I have a mother failing health, and I continue to support a son who has a severe disability. So I am going to be saying goodbye, but I want you to know that my time with you it's been joyful. It's been joyful, it's been challenging, and I expect that you will continue to unfold in really beautiful ways. So with that, dear ones, thank you for the gifts that you have given to me. I have grown from my time with you, and I will be carrying you forward in my heart and counting you among my blessings. Let's close with our hymn number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do.
You gotta do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do. Oh Lord, you gotta do when the Spirit says do.
You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance. Oh Lord, you gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing, oh Lord, you gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing,
You gotta sing,
you gotta dance,
you gotta dance,
you gotta do when the Spirit says do.
Now it's time for our offering. More like a flame than a place is this church. More of a trust than a creed. More of kindled promises. Therefore, let us bind ourselves together with love and fortify one another, the sure knowledge that it matters that we are here, against all odds, making way forward together. Let us give thanks for all the gifts of care, trust, forgiveness, and growth we receive from being a part of this beloved community. In this spirit, we will now receive the morning offering.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land where I'm bound. Oh, where I'm bound. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land where I'm bound. Where I'm bound. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land where I'm bound. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land where I'm bound. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land where I'm bound.
In parting, I want to share some of the words that I first shared with you when we first met over a year ago. I carry these words with me in my wallet to remind me of exactly what we were talking about this morning. These are words from Prometheus Unbound by Percy Shelley. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the story of Prometheus, he was punished by the gods for bringing fire to humanity and was stretched out on a rock. And every day the harpies would consume a portion of him, and he was bound to be suffering for the rest of his days, for eternity. So Percy Shelley wrote these words: to suffer hope, which hope thinks infinite, to forgive wrongs darker than death or night, to defy corrupt power, which seems omnipotent, and to love and bear and to hope, till hope creates from its own wreck the thing it contemplates. This, like thy glory, Titan, is to be good, great, and joyous, beautiful, and free. This is alone life, joy, kingdom, and victory.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. Never understood a single word he said, but I helped him get his mind. And he always had some mighty fine line, singing joy to the world. Oh, the boys and girls now, joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. If I were the king of the world, I'd tell you what I'd do. Throw away the cars and the bars and the war and make sweet love to you, singing joy to the world. All the boys and girls now, joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea, joy to you and me. You know I love the people, love to have my fun. I'm a highlight flyer in a rainbow rider, a straight shooting saddle gun. I said a straight shooting